So Larry has been ensconced at my old alma mater. He has been sitting in Royce Hall, where I spent many an hour listening to biology lectures. And he's been listening to stuff that's way more exciting and interesting than those biology lectures were about 100 years ago when I was there. Larry, you were involved in the All In conference. And for
All in
those,
Summit. All in
I'm sorry,
Summit.
All In Summit. And for
Yep.
those that don't even know what an All In Summit is, could you give us a little bit of an understanding of what this is all about?
So the All in Summit is all about the besties. The besties is a group of four VC venture capitalists, uh, moderated by the greatest moderator in the world, Jason Calacanis, and Chamath Palihapitiya, David Friedberg, and David Sachs. So these guys are, they're Silicon Valley royalty. They're, non-pareil investors. But what's interesting about them is they each bring really a piece of excellence with them, a particular specialty. David Sachs is one of the greatest operators in the venture space. He was the chief operating officer of PayPal. He's one of the PayPal mafia. He has built a venture capital, a VC company. He's built several companies, by the way, one of which was Yammer, which he sold for over $1 billion to Microsoft. But after he was at PayPal, he also has his own VC firm, and he has a lot of billion-dollar exits behind him, and he shares a great deal about how to operate a startup at its different phases. And really, his advice is outstanding. I've been reading him for years. I love the work he does. Jason Calacanis runs a kind of a VC business for small VC for small independent venture capitalists to make relatively small bets through his funds. He puts together groups and participates in VC activity. I would not put him in the same class as David Sachs or Chamath Palihapitiya, but he's done a lot of good stuff. He was an early investor, famously in Uber. He'll tell you that many times. And he's pretty darn good in terms of putting together the podcast. David Friedberg is a very interesting guy. Now, both David Friedberg and David Sachs come from South Africa, so I'm pretty proud of those guys.
There you go.
David Friedberg has a he worked for Google for a long time. He was very early, one of the earliest employees at Google, worked directly with the founders. He left to start up an agricultural insurance startup, did very well, sold it for $1 billion, and he exited for over $1 billion. And he since then he has his own VC company. I think it's called the Production Board. And but what's interesting about him is that he's a scientist, and in the group he does the science hour or the science corner or the science 10 minutes every time they do a podcast. So they podcast, I guess they try and do it bi-weekly. I think it's bi-weekly. it's long form. It's an hour to 2 hours. Recently, due to David Sacks' very active political life, they brought on some of the candidates for president. They've had several of them, and they're aiming to have several more from across the board. They're not. I mean, up to now, it's been many of the Republican hopefuls. They hope for more, but what you should know about them is that the podcast is extraordinarily interesting. I watch it on YouTube. I guess it's now going to be on X, because it's really interesting to see the play between these guys. But I also listen to it in the car because, the audio is good enough and interesting enough that you get the play between them. So that's the background. Now, last year they had a summit in Florida. I went to that. All of us got COVID, by the way.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it's true. It was fantastic. I mean, I really enjoyed it. They had a really strong program. We had a lot of backwards and forwards on the stage. There were a few interesting moments. And they've put the entire conference from last year on YouTube.
Okay.
Conference this year was a step up, a very significant step up, largely because, last year Jason put together the whole thing. Jason really has done a lot of events. He's very experienced. He's very good at it. But this year, David Friedberg put the program together, and he put a lot of thought into a lot of really, really top people. I mean, it was amazing. And so the turnout was fantastic. It was 1,800 people. Last year, there were only 750 people.
Oh.
And of course, every night they have a big party, and these guys party hard. It was a lot of fun. At 76, excuse me.
Yeah, I was going to say, what happened here? What happened here? I thought,
Yeah. I'm trying on. At 76, it's too loud for my ears, and
Well, Larry, you were telling me that there was one particular program that just completely blew your mind. And I thought it was relevant for our group because I'm about 2/3 of the way through the new bio. And one of the recurring themes in the bio is that Elon Musk doesn't care very much for regulation in general, and is inclined many times to just kind of run roughshod over regulations, even when shooting off rockets.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. But to be fair to Elon, Elon believes in regulation.
Yes.
Where there's good reason to have that regulation.
Yes. Me too.
I think, and I think we can all say grace over that. I think where Elon really bristles is where regulation is, unfounded.
Yes.
By the circumstances and by the nature of it. But I have to say, Bill Gurley did this presentation, and it's the result of several years of work that he's been doing. So Bill Gurley is, he is a legend in Silicon Valley. He ran Benchmark, which is one of the top VC companies. He's kind of moving into retirement. I'm not exactly sure what the status is, but I understand he's either retired or is becoming retired. And he spent the last couple of years working on this presentation. And I want to tell you, he hasn't wasted his time. Oh my goodness. If they're gonna put all of the stuff on YouTube, and I recommend it all, by the way.
Right.
It's outstanding. But if you want to watch one, it would be Bill Gurley. Firstly, you will be amused. It is very entertaining. Secondly, the entertainment side of it is entertainment that comes from he puts a lot of effort into making it light and easy to understand, and so his jokes, every one of his jokes land, with a real bang, but they're extremely well targeted. They each have a point.
And
the thesis is simple.
Yeah. And so what is the title? What is the subject?
What is the title?
The subject of the talk?
The title is regulatory capture.
Regulatory capture. All right. Yeah. And so what is...
and the notion of regulatory capture is when the industry being regulated take control of the regulators. That's the capture part of it. So that those being regulated achieve the goals they want to achieve, which is classically monopoly power, pricing power, the ability to make profits without having to innovate or to compete. And he gives some brilliant examples that are so clear, and it's so easy to take from those examples a direct line to so many other classic situations. And so I don't want to talk about, the opportunity to look at the FDA, but the one of the clearest examples he gives is in medical records. So, Obama famously gave many, many billions of dollars to automate medical records as part of the rewrite of the health entitlement program.
Right.
And he takes us through step by step how the bill was written, the piece of the bill that had to do with medical records. Now, electronic medical records are a really good thing. I think we can all say grace over that.
Yes. I think almost all regulation probably starts out with some kernel of good.
That's his point. But then what happens, and he takes you through the institutional process of how it happens and why it happens. The example he gives is of this EMRs and electronic medical records, where the leading company in EMR literally writes the bill. And he gives kudos to the CEO of Epic, the company that did this rewrite, and who then just took over the industry. She's a very, pleasant lady. She seems to have a lot of smarts, but boy, did she hit it out of the park. Because they literally took, directly from Epic's software, they took the list of features and they wrote it in as requirements. If you want to get the money for EMR as a doc, you have to buy something that complies with these things. And if it doesn't comply, list of these features. If it hasn't got these features that does the thing in exactly this way, then you're going to get fined. And every one of Epic's competitors got fined, not a few $1 million, hundreds of millions of dollars. So, that's regulatory capture at its finest.
Yeah. And I think simultaneously, it pretty well put the independent doctor out of business.
Well, there's a lot more to how the independent doctor got out of business. And, we can talk about that separately, because I did meet somebody who actually is innovating in that space to put the independent doctor back into business. It's very interesting. And I was quite blown away by the concept, but that's an aside.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, the bottom line is And where does this apply for, in terms of Tesla and in terms of Elon? Well, we know that Elon understands this. We get that. I mean, Elon famously is a rule breaker. As
Entrepreneurs in general. Sometimes if you look up the definition of rule breaker or entrepreneur, it's on the same page in the dictionary.
There's no doubt about it, and I will admit to breaking a rule or two in my business career. I will. I won't specify which ones, but
Me either.
But Elon is famous for saying that rule is just silly and we're not going to comply, and then we'll fight when it comes to the fight.
Something about COVID and keeping his factories open comes to mind right away. I don't know that
as an example, but there are many
examples. Yeah.
And but Elon, I think he understands the game very well. So right now, as we speak, there's a committee of meeting secretly, in secret, with closed doors on regulation for AI. Now, why would Sam Altman call for regulation for AI? Why would Sam Altman be there writing, the regulation that he wants for AI?
I'm going to guess that you have a good answer for that.
Well, here's the answer. Sam, the guys from Google, Elon, the guys from Microsoft, they're all going to be there. And they're going to write the rules. And guess what? Those are going to be the players that own the playing field.
Yep.
And that's the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Elon enters into the rule-making side of this AI situation because he's nervous that if there's no rules at all, it'd be kind of like not having any regulation of airline. He made the example. He says, do we not want to have regulations in the airline industry? Do we not want to have regulations over food production that, many, many people could lose their lives if we don't have some kind of regulation? So he feels that this is as great a threat as nuclear weaponry and feels like there needs to be regulation. But as we said earlier, these regulations always start out with some good in mind. Then the question becomes who gets to write the regulations and do their own needs, their own corporate desires end up getting mixed in with the good of the people.
Well, game theory says you can't not go to the meeting. In other words, if Sam's going to have a meeting, Elon had better be there. And if Sam and Elon are there, then for sure Google had got to be there. And Microsoft has to protect its own interests because it's not exactly Sam. And so, and then there's Anthropic and one or two other minor players. But then it gets to a point where it's a cutoff, and it is these players whose voices are heard, represented, and the whole process begins. Now, game theory really helps us understand how regulatory capture begins. The question is how to obviate the need for the industry to be the lead. It's difficult. Sam called for, like a nuclear regulatory agency type organization for AI. That to me is a problem.
Well, the Nuclear Regulatory Agency has been blamed for the end of any kind of nuclear advancement, any kind of ability to build a new idea in the space, in the nuclear energy space.
What thing? Yeah, what's interesting is we had a presentation, and I urge everybody to go and listen to it, on fusion. So I was shocked to learn that fusion is far further along than I thought. Fusion famously was always 50 years,
Right.
available is going to become real in 50 years' time, and it has been becoming real in 50 years' time for the last 50 years. But what I learned is that we are much, much further along, and that the breakthroughs, scientific breakthroughs, engineering breakthroughs, and theoretical breakthroughs of the last couple of decades have really positioned us to where there's a very high certainty that production fusion is going to be achieved over the next decade. And there's, two companies came to do presentations that feel very confident of producing power, energy in the next within the next 10 years. And both of them have, trial or prototype operations up and running, or will have very shortly prototype operations up and running. What is fascinating is that they were able to get recognized, to get their regulatory body recognized as the same body that regulates these imaging technologies,
Okay.
which are local. And the difference between that body regulating them and the Nuclear Regulatory Agency regulating them is a couple of $1 million here and many, many billions of dollars here, or tens of billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it seems to me that there is a better way to go than go to Washington and get Washington involved this early. I think that what we did as an industry in the software industry is when Barbara and I wrote the book on decision management, is we co-opted one of the industry bodies, industry organizations,
Mm-hmm.
to look at decision management, and they built a standard around decision management, and that standard then other software companies could use. And although it's not regulation, it's really writing standards that allowed many flowers to bloom, many different companies to take a slightly different approach, on the subject, and became very competitive. So it seems to me that would be a better way forward this early in the cycle than to bring the government in.
So isn't that what Elon is suggesting, is that open sourcing the AI, that if all of the companies, maybe the first regulation is, if you're going to do AI, it has to be open source. The government could make that kind of a regulation without even being expert. What
do you do about China? Well, let's not single out China. What do you do about national competition?
Competition in other countries that don't have to.
Yeah, if you make it open source, basically you're handing it to anybody, including the Indians, the Chinese.
Right.
So I think that's an issue in the matter of AI, because certainly China will not make it open source.
Uh-huh. So the question would be, if they don't make it open source, then they start losing necessarily access. How do you keep, and I don't know, we're probably getting way off the beaten path here into categories of stuff that neither one of us may know about, but it's a question, I guess, that Elon seems to be very passionate about, that it should be open sourced.
Well, are you suggesting that FSD should be open source?
I think that he's on the fence on that. I think he's considering that maybe it would be open sourced. Yeah. There's a difference between open source and being able to execute. It doesn't mean that somebody's going to have the compute and the data necessary to do FSD just because they have the they have the keys to the software.
Open source in AI is a very tricky subject, because I'm not sure if you have the weights, you can simply build the software. I mean, it could be that you can. FSD, the question is what is open source? It's a very interesting subject, but I will say that what's going to come out of Washington is not going to be good.
Probably not. In general, I think we can agree on that.
Yeah. So I think, we should look at the presentation from Bill Gurley again, and we should give a lot of thought to it, and be interesting to hear what Elon comes back from Washington with.
I know that I did get a little bit, they haven't released the entire program yet that I know of, or whether they're going to, I don't know, but I know that Elon came out of the meeting, and others came out of the meeting, basically there was a sense that open source was a real possibility, that Schumer, who I don't trust as far as I can throw him, but Schumer said that they would definitely probably put together some kind of regulations with regard to this. But I know that it was, I'm not going to remember now, but one of the major players, they couldn't get him to go on record as he was leaving as to whether they would make, I think it might have been Google, whether they would be willing to go open source at Google. I can't, that may be wrong. Put in the comments below if you know who it was that said that they couldn't get him to go on the record.
Yeah, I'm fascinated what open source really even means in the AI context.
Yeah.
Very, very interested. I know that they went into, OpenAI, the organization, with that in mind.
Right.
But good. I mean, time will tell. Time will tell.
Well, okay. So what we learned from this particular conversation is that folks should be aware of the fact that the YouTube videos will be coming out from this all-in conference, that if you are not currently a fan or haven't been listening to the podcasts that the AI group, the all-in group put on, that's something you might want to look up and watch those podcasts. You don't want to take any time away from my podcasts in order to do that. But if you have time left over, then you could start watching the all-in podcasts as well. And
the beauty of the all-in podcast is that they're not time sensitive.
Yeah.
They're background information. I think, Randy, what you do is you give a context in terms of that information and what it means today.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a difference there. And I think that background information that will be gleaned from the all-in conference will stand the listener in good stead over time.
Yeah. So, Larry, I, as always, want to thank you for being a part and for contributing today. And you will be back with me on, if not before, no later than Friday night at about 1:30 or sometime between 1:30 and 4:30, because you're in California. Well, who knows? Where are you going to be on Friday?
Yeah, I'll be in California. I was at SpaceX today.
Okay.
And then I will be I'm on my way to visit with Tesla Boomer Mama, and then I'm on my way to Fremont.
And on your way to Fremont and Lathrop, I understand.
And Lathrop. I will be meeting Brad Ferguson.
And Lathrop.
Actually, we'll be meeting at Fremont. We're touring Fremont together.
Okay.
And then we will, I'll go visit him counting trucks in Lathrop. And and then I'm off to Yosemite for a while. So I'll be off the grid for, a couple of days.
All right. But on Friday, sometime between 1:30 and 4:30, you and I will get together and we will do our good news wrap up for the week. and talk about, because this is a big week. It has already been, I can't even keep up with it, Larry. The news is breaking so fast this particular week, but maybe next week next week we got the Fed. It never stops.
Well, it's interesting that the stock price is being resilient.
Yes.
And, I'd be interested to have an understanding of why the price rose recently, whether it was, in fact, what was the combination? I think it's the analysts beginning to change their tune.
You listened to my video earlier today. No, you didn't. It's exactly.
No, I've been on the road all day.
I know. That's exactly what I talked about, Larry. I said basically that Elon, 3 months ago, he said, Tesla is now an AI company specializing in robotics. And then multiple times he has made the comment that the vast majority of the value of Tesla will eventually be AI and robotics. And then he puts on the little drive, what was that, 2 or 3 Fridays ago. And I believe that that's what triggered the Goldman Sachs. No, I'm sorry, the
Morgan Stanley.
Yes, that I believe that's what triggered them to put together their analysis. And so they are now calling Tesla an AI company, and that forces everybody to have the conversation. They can agree or disagree, but it's going to be the conversation. And it has been. Lots of CNBC, lots of Barron's articles, all kinds of folks coming in and saying, are they AI? Are they car? What are they? What is their future? So yeah, I think that's why the stock is, I think that's the main reason, because we still don't have a
Is that why Gordon Johnson got so exercised over?
Oh, you did see that part, huh?
Gordon Johnson, when I see him, as I scroll through and I see his name, I love to listen to the guy because he's so funny. He is so funny. I love it.
I did not listen to it. I just saw the headline and like about 20 words. I'm the opposite of you. I cannot listen to him because it drives me nuts.
But he's so upset by the realization by the analysts of this, what Tesla really is, that this triggers him. Anyway, Randy, it was fun. I have got a long drive tomorrow.
Yes, and we'll see you on Friday afternoon at the same place. Great talking to you, Larry, as always, and to all of you out there. I've enjoyed this very much. Good talking to you. If you don't mind, I do want to pitch my little device here. I have these little devices for $25. You can't believe how cool this is. Look at how thick the stainless. I mean, holy mackerel! It comes in a camo as well. It's a can opener. I mean, I'm sorry, not a can opener, a bottle opener. So you got your bottle opener here too, and it's got a magnet on the back, so you can slap it up on your fridge. I mean, is this good or what? So anyway, you just send $25 to my PayPal account. It's down in the information below. Just click on there. You can send it 20. Now, if you're out of the country, I got to charge you an extra $20 for freight. So, or if you join my Patreon, I'll give you one at the $10 level. I'll give you one for free.
Click the link below to get your paperback, Kindle, or audiobook now.